I'm going to go ahead and read this, which will kind of, and then you read Sue Harmon's.
I have Sue Harmon's.
And I should also say that
then it'll be an open mic.
tracking down people has been fun because I've had wonderful messages from, well, Craig and Sue Pickering, and sadly we know Dru is very ill with lung cancer. But
Didn't know that until we saw your email. We didn't know that.
Yeah. Okay. So, but Sue Harmon is close to her and in touch, and really for me it brought back wonderful memories of that special time. Anyway, bear with me. My friendship with Irma began in 1972 when I was hired to be Irma's assistant producer shortly before the home program was started. Together we went on the air at 9 each weekday morning. Irma would say, "I'm Irma Aandahl, and with me is Margaret West, who arranged today's program." Off we go. Guests joined us in the studio for a live discussion along with listener calls. It was an exhilarating time for me. Call-in radio was new. There were no limits on what we tackled. From the beginning, Irma let me know how pleased she was that I came onto the scene just when Sue Harmon was persuading her to start the program. I came to WAMU by bus every morning, cutting it fine, with my handwritten scripts. Ever calm, she trusted me to be there and able to carry the show. We worked hard every day until she drove us both from the station in her car with the registration plates Fred had given her, UFA.
Right.
Yep.
Which it means drat, I understand.
Oh, that's polite.
Our programs were diverse. Viruses, international capital markets, that had been my work in London, is small, beautiful. Women in classical antiquity, in praise of pigs, Darwin, headlights, Islam, women in the military. Within months of starting the program, I'd interviewed economist Paul Samuelson at MIT and Hero, Whole Earth Catalog founder Stuart Brand in California. Irma aired those entire hour-long interviews, a break for Irma. On Thanksgiving Day 1972, Tom and I wrote and performed science fiction for radio, complete with studio sound effects. Soon the Washington Post was listing our topics and guests. A producer of NPR's Horizons bought more and more of our programs for rebroadcast. Irma used the proceeds to take the home program group out for Friday lunches at good restaurants.
In Spring Valley.
Downtown. They're the best places. NPR's Keith Talbot used to call us every morning after the shows with comments. Listeners did the same. As word spread, others joined us. Dru Campbell and Michelle Slung had been there at the beginning. Faye Armstrong, who brought in her friend Diane. Sue Lieberman, who soon started her own weekly program, Family Council. Franchesca Hecht, known later for her programs, Gardening for Everyone. Sue Pickering, Denise Freeland, Alyne Boren, now Aileen Ellis, Barbara Temchin, Doris Stoker, Lynn Schuster. By the way, Denise is supposed to be here. The team of women who had been trained and encouraged by Irma worked together as a quite remarkable group. It was a heady, intellectually challenging and creative time. It was a wonderful time, I think, for all of us. By the end of 1973, when our first child was born, Diane had been hired to take my place as the only paid staffer at home, except for Irma. I continued to do occasional programs while Diane moved on to other challenges. I filled in for Irma in the months of in 1979 after she and Fred left for Princeton. Later that year, Diane was hired as her successor. In time, I moved on to host Cabbages and Kings in Colorado, and later to NPR, where I worked for years as an editor and producer. Later, I was founding producer of Talk of the Nation, which was directly related to my earlier call-in experience with Irma, and from Diane pushing my case with Bill Busenberg. As host at WAMU-FM, Irma was a generous mentor, demanding the best, having the highest expectations, but she also was supportive, understanding, wise, and fun-loving. Eventually, she was responsible for filling 3 hours of airtime every weekday morning, 5 days a week.
Wow.
She had a long, full, and varied life. She loved her family dearly, but I think that her best years were the public radio years. She had every reason to be proud of the people she taught and the high professional standards that they still exhibit.
Bravo.
So what was the year when you
I was,
came?
I came in 1972.
70.
And I came in 73.
That's right.
Yeah.
But you know, to walk down that hallway, and it really was an experience of women. But you didn't think of it as, oh, here are a bunch of girls or women. It was these capable, smart, funny, intelligent, and doing important things and whimsical things, and everybody supported each other. That corridor it was so wonderful to come down through there.
Well, at one point, like Pat's saying, in that corridor, as you come in the lobby and you turn left to go down towards the studio, the guy, now I don't recall where my office was. This is when I was production manager. So Dave was chief engineer and they were all downstairs and everything. But Lillian, Lillian had the big office on the left.
That was her last
Eventually
name.
we took it over. But speaking of women there, so Lillian was on the left. Jean Potter
Yes.
had the next office. The next office was Irma, and that had been your office, but by this time, Susan, you'd gone to NPR, but it was Irma and you, and then Gary Imhoff was the first sort of male invader of that area because he had been brought on he had a grant.
He shared our office.
Yes, with Arthur, it was a Black History program. He had a grant, but anyhow.
You know, Arthur,
But it was like all women right there, you know?
But Lillian had gone.
yes.
Yeah.
At
By
this
the time
point,
I
yeah.
got
Good.
there.
Sue
Absolutely.
took care
Well,
of
I'm
it.
trying to
I
fill
loved
in
it,
for
but
you.
she said-
I'm trying to reinforce what Pat said. Once it
Yeah.
was like a hallway,
Yeah.
it distinguished very well,
Yeah.
except for Lillian.
Well, and it depended
Lillian
what
was
day
around
of
the
the week
place.
it was in
In your
Irma's
office? Yeah.
depending on who had what program and who had what interviews, you know, and
Right.
who sat at the
Sure.
desk, so you didn't always know who would be there
Right.
at any one
Yeah.
That's
time.
right, because the space was pretty tight. You
Yeah,
all
there
had
was
shared
we
quarters
all had
and an
shared,
editing
right.
machine
Yeah,
and all.
yeah.
Sue and I figured it was the size of this room.
Probably
With-
something.
Probably.
Yes, it was about that.
Yeah.
Maybe a little.
Every four desks.
Yeah.
What a
Work
great,
areas.
what a great room to work in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
My
And you
first
know,
But
office, there was a broom closet. They took the sink out, and then my first day back, my first day in the room, I had a headache. It was killing me, and I said to David Eccleston, he
Oh,
and
wow.
Mike
Yes.
Harris and George Giese were the founders
Yeah.
of the station. They taught me right here, and I said to David, "Oh God, I just feel so sick." He said, "You're getting gas out of the uncapped thing."
Oh, Lord.
So that would have been 64.
Yeah,
Oh,
that
that-
was
oh,
pretty,
that
all
early.
of us.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah.
That was
Right.
for the nascent years of WAMU, right?
Yeah,
They just went on
that's
there
a
and
collective
said,
Right.
Right.
Did you call it Kaleidoscope then?
Well, I can't remember how that happened because
I
Kaleidoscope
think
was
it
your
was
show.
your show was
It
Your
was
show was
on, but-
Kaleidoscope before it
And
became
Irma
All
was
Things
home.
Considered.
I think Irma's.
Irma started out as home,
Yeah.
the home show.
Named
But
by
before
Sue.
that, she
But
was doing up
the
the school
DC
thing.
She was doing
Yeah,
DC
well, I was gonna
school.
fill in those
Yeah.
years, but I think Sue, you were gonna go you and then,
Yeah.
before we
Well,
opened it all
I-
up, because I was gonna fill in some of those.
Yeah, but I just want to
Blank.
ask one question. You know, you told, I came to WAMU because I had run for school board, and you heard me give a talk. And I had lost the election, but you asked me if I would cover the new school board. Of course, I didn't know anything about reporting, like I didn't know anything about school. Well, I knew about school. That was what I'd done before. But anyway, but then, you know, what I can't remember is I covered the new school board, but then when was there a transition to Irma? I ran for school board in 70.
Yes, see, I had left. I went to India in 64. So I don't know what happened in those
But you
years.
must have been back when
I got to come back when I took whatever the position, whatever the thing was that Irma was doing.
so that was when you asked me to come aboard. I mean, that's what I was trying to understand.
Okay, that's
well,
when it was. So it was
Susan-
in 68 or 9.
Maybe
Susan
it was-
predates all of it. I didn't have any
I predate
experience
the
or
world
exposure there till the spring of '69. Spring of '69, because I was a freshman at AU. So I had a course with Liz Young
Oh, gee.
in broadcasting techniques or something. And then I had a 1-credit course with Mike Harris, and this is what I was sharing earlier. I'm trying to stitch the chronology together. So in the fall of '69, I had left a tape for Susan. So you were still there in '69 doing Kaleidoscope. I had edited a tape on Friday of this contributor to her show who would come in and pre-record it, who was awful. I mean, she was a good contributor, but she coughed and gagged, and she was just not ready and ready. So I took that tape between my assignments of doing the news and made a copy of it because I didn't want to mess with the original. Marvin T. Brown was at the controls of the Starship.
Great memory.
And I edited this thing all up and cut out all these coughs and gags and everything.
That's hard
And left it with a note with that American University with that stupid Lodestone Star letterhead. Miss Stamberg, hope you don't mind, I took the liberty of making a copy of Nancy Lang's tape, blah, blah, blah. I cleaned it up a little bit, hope you don't mind. That was a Friday night, and she dispels this or doesn't remember it. Monday morning at 10, I get a phone call at home, and Susan Stamberg offered me my first job.
For
Whether she
$1.78.
was allowed to or not, it was like
I don't know, I have hiring powers.
Just like, I don't know. That's a true story.
And tell what you got paid.
$1.78 an hour for 10. And all you could guarantee me was 10 hours of work a week. So do the math. It's like $11 a week or something.
You said yes.
And I went in.
And that was the beginning of
and-
it.
Okay, so Susan's there, and we'll come back to Irma in a second, but this is really funny. So Susan one day had said, look, I've got this hour-long tape of Marshall McLuhan, you know, the global,
Yes.
you
He was
know,
just
world,
on today.
Just on.
And she says, I need an 8-minute segment or 10-minute segment of Marshall McLuhan. Well, this guy didn't even take a breath. There was no beginning or end. It was a 59-minute lecture that had been recorded in the lecture hall. So I swear to God, this is true. This is a true story. So I'm in the little editing booth or Studio E or whatever it is. And I said, oh my God, I can't even understand what this guy is saying. So I put some leader tape on a reel, and I ran this until he went, and I sliced it on, and I got my stopwatch, and I ran 10 minutes and stopped it and went, and wrote a lead into it or something, and it ran on Kaleidoscope. And I bet nobody in the world listening had any idea what the context was of all people. Some freshman, you know, at $1.70 per edit Marshall McLuhan. But that was very early, and so so Susan was there in the early mid-60s. So now we're talking about 69, so we're sort of winding things down for the decade.
That was so funny.
And I knew Susan because Susan and Irma shared an office, correct? Did you not?
No,
I thought you had that big office.
what was his name? Roger Penn. Does anyone
Yes.
remember?
But see, that was
He
sort of
and Geezer
before.
were the ones who put the thing on the air.
Geezy and Roger Penn.
And Roger Penn.
Yeah.
And when I came back from India, which was 68, I called Roger, said, what's going on? And he said, well, there's a woman, and he meant Irma. I didn't know her.
Right.
Who has been doing this program, but she's leaving. Would that have been right?
No, that's
She
not
left
the right
and then-
time, because the
then her
contract
grant
ran
was-
out later or something.
Then her grant was running out or
Okay.
something. And he said, well, maybe there'd be a chance for you. She was doing a children's program,
Yeah.
as I remember.
Well, she's the
Yeah.
DC
Yeah.
Schools radio
DC
project.
DC
So, I mean,
School, that was it.
Yes.
That was
Yeah,
it.
DC
And I
School,
said,
yeah.
I'm not interested in doing children's broadcast. I want to do, to the community and adult. And he said, let me see what I can do. And he made that happen. I don't know how. But, she wasn't fired or anything, was she?
Well, you see,
But I wonder
see,
if-
my first experience, when I was aware of all this, you were already doing this
Yes, and that would have
Kaleidoscope,
been
because now we're at the
69.
fall of '69.
Right.
And for a number of years, and in a minute when someone's talking, I'll pull it, because I've got my chronology on myself. I have a year-by-year chronology. But Irma, now we're all sort of
So
there
did the
and
school
everything.
project come to an
The
end?
school project,
think
Lewis
she lost her
Kornhauser,
grant.
Lewis Kornhauser was the superintendent of schools in charge of the project. The funding ended.
That's
Does
it.
that name
That's
ring a
it.
bell with you?
Yeah.
For the school?
Is that
And the funding ended, and Irma was like, well, that's it, I guess I've got to leave.
Yeah.
And again, I can't recall whether Lillian still was in charge or not, or whether, but Susan and Jean, because Jean was program
Yes.
director at this point, said, hey, we can't let Irma go, we gotta do something, blah, blah, blah. Now we have all these blank hours, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, because we don't have the toilets flushing and all that. Remember it was sound
Yes.
things, and
Sound
storytelling and
Yes.
everything. So he said, we gotta do something. And we had sort of the morning show, the early precursor to morning edition, whatever was
Yes.
on. Because at that time, we didn't even sign on the air till 8 o'clock in the morning or something.
Or just before,
yeah,
15 minutes
Buzz did it,
before
then
her.
Craig or something. And we said, well, we got to do something, and we cobbled together the home show.
Okay.
And Irma.
And I think it was
and then
Sue's
And you went over to
enthusiasm.
NPR.
Irma's
I would think yours
reluctance.
started 70.
And-
Yeah.
Oh, yeah,
Yes.
Irma was very,
Yeah.
that's too much, and I said, come
And
on, we got to do it.
my
we gotta do it.
enthusiasm was enough to overrule Irma's doubts.
Yeah.
Sort of.
Okay,
And
so
she-
we sort of set the chronological clock,
Thank
so
you.
now we have to hear Sue's.
Okay,
Okay, well, this is from Susan
Harmon.
Harmon, right. So, Irma was elegant. For those of us who remember her important role in each of our lives, I almost don't have to define or describe how that elegance played out. A few synonyms for elegant, stylish, smart, graceful, discerning, sophisticated, cultivated, dignified, polished. All these words can evoke even more memories of how she conducted herself as a public radio pioneer, as a collaborative colleague, and as a friend and mentor to so many of us, which she was. I was always excited to see and confer with Irma. She was a positive and helpful presence in my life, especially at the beginning of my tenure as a young station manager of WAMU. She was generous with advice, but flexible if I didn't follow it. She took an interest in all aspects of the station beyond her own program. She and Fred contributed to our socializing by hosting parties at their beautiful Watergate apartment. I remember that was the first time I'd ever been to Watergate. She talked about how hard it was to furnish a curved.
That's right.
That's right. Remember that?
Yeah, her Oriental carpet.
And did that definition include gracious because she was?
Oh, she was.
I think
Yes.
there was gracious in the
One more paragraph. Irma was a vivid, curious person and a champion for women. The driving force of the home program was to broadcast something substantive and informative every morning for people at home, people who in the early 70s were mostly women, because women's lib was just starting. She brought together a group of talented women volunteers to help produce this ambitious daily broadcast. It was an elegant solution to expand opportunities for women to learn and grow.
Mm-hmm.
Great.
Yeah.
Bravo.
But it didn't feel feminist or militant or harsh or all those things that had been ascribed to it. It was so beautiful, I thought. Yeah, it was comfortable and lifted everyone up.
And you just walked into that office and felt her warmth, felt her welcoming.
Mm-hmm.
I can remember the first day I had to cut tape. And I said, Irma, how do I do this? She leaned over, she showed me exactly what to do. She was marvelous.
Yeah, I remember one day she said, somebody has to interview Buckminster Fuller. Do you remember that? And there was nobody but me of it. I didn't even know how to pronounce the name. For an hour. I mean, it was like...
worse than
That's exactly
That's what I was reminded of when you talked about that.
Yes.
I thought, she said, you can do it, Susan, just, read this one couple things I have, and for, God knows that we did it somehow. We did it.
And another thing is how many shows or limited series programs
Yes.
Irma's show
Started
inspired or
Oh,
started.
absolutely.
Because Martha Sager would come in
Yes.
from the biology department or whatever and do something on environment. And the next thing you know, Irma has steered her, or someone's heard Martha Sager, and she's got a grant from the Department of Education, and she's doing the Urban Ecology show.
Yes.
You know, and that was like, it was a 13-week hour-long series or
And
something.
maybe Diane was the next when you did Mind and Body.
Mind and Body, yes, that.
I did not get paid for Mind and Body. I simply went to Irma and said, you know, I had this idea about medicine, the relationship between what happens in the head, what happens
Yes.
to the body. Can we go ahead?
Yes.
Develop
And who was now Franchesca Hecht did
Gardening for everyone.
the gardening
Yeah,
show.
for years.
But
That
that
was
started out
great.
as a segment but
That's
became a
right.
show.
Right.
And there was the
And you were in
And
family
I
council.
did family
Money.
council.
Money with John.
Oh, gosh.
He was the one.
Not John
who
Merrill.
said-
Couldn't
no,
be.
no.
That was NPR.
He was the one who said 10 years from now, you will be using nothing but plastic.
oh, he was wrong.
Whoa.
Really,
Could it be John Murley?
No, oh no.
John Burrow.
Isn't that funny?
John,
Diane?
wait,
That's
this
totally
is a radio
forgotten this.
person?
No,
Merwin.
he was the
Wasn't
money
he-
guy.
Merwin, wasn't he the reader? Who was
Merritt.
that? Merritt.
Ed
That
Merritt.
was Ed Merritt.
Merritt,
Yeah.
yeah. But that
You know,
was-
that's something that, isn't that interesting?
And
My
did
selective
you-
memory, I've
Yeah.
forgotten this
Yeah.
altogether.
Yes.
She
worked with.
yeah.
Yeah.
And that might have been when
Yeah.
you were
Yeah.
doing a lot of programming and I was
Yellow
at
Springs.
home with babies.
It could have been, because there was, let's see, on Mondays, there was Ed Merritt.
Yes.
On Tuesdays, there
Family
was.
council.
Family council.
Yeah,
Yeah.
family council. On Wednesdays, there was Francesca. On Thursday, there was John on money matters, and Friday something else.
And later there was also Doris Stoker for a while did a program on books on
Doris.
Fridays.
Doris.
Stoker.
I don't remember that.
But that was
But
late
see,
in the game.
after I took the program in '79, we were down to 2 hours because we knew Morning Edition was coming.
Oh, that's right.
When I
Yes.
took it in September,
Yes.
they told me that Morning Edition was coming in
And you would
November,
change your hours.
and that would
Yeah.
change.
So it was 3 hours
It was
originally?
Yes.
3
Yep.
hours.
Every day.
She got it going.
We were, before you came, Sue and I were talking about the fact that I really realized how much time it was when I filled in for Irma when she left and before her successor was chosen. And it was, I now marvel that I could do it, but we had an au pair that year, and I had sort of 2 small boys, but I did the program, so I hosted the program in the morning, and that most of your energy went into that 90 minutes. But then there were the other blocks of time to be filled, and there was a whole range of NPR programs
Right.
that we could choose from, but it would mean listening to them. And then there were the slots that the rest of you, I suppose, Diane, were you still
Yeah, I mean,
coming
she
in then
would
to do
just
your
give us
program?
different
That's what I
things
thought.
to do.
And you knew you could count absolutely
two
on
programs.
all our regulars,
Yeah.
but it was
She was
just
never
a lot of work.
flustered either. I mean,
Yeah.
when
Oh,
I
she
think
was
about
always
it.
very
That's
cool-headed.
really
You know,
nice
yeah,
that
I
she
mean,
didn't panic and go into a rage or
Yeah,
something like
she
some
was
people.
always calming, you know.
That's right, we thought that
were
was
all
her
flustered.
theatre years that
Yeah, must
meant
have
she
been.
was so,
You know, Sue, maybe this was your show, but it was one of the most compelling pieces of radio I ever heard, and it was a man who was an expert on being a step parent.
Probably. one
And
of
he was expounding about this and blah, blah, blah. And a young boy called in and threw out a situation. And it was this electric silence. And the man said, Johnny? And it was his child, it was his stepchild. And this kid brought up a family problem that this expert knew nothing about. And it was really amazing radio. It was so dramatic.
What radio?
Right, he was exposed as not knowing what was going on in his own home. And it was really exciting. I remember that.
I'm surprised this.
sure you would be right.
In June of 1971, Lillian Brown was gone and Susan was the station manager.
Okay,
June of
so
71.
tell us for a moment about how you got rid
I didn't do it. Harmon did it, but I did my damnedest to get rid of her.
Oh,
And I was not successful.
Oh, Lillian? Oh, that is
Lillian.
good. You've got the experts here.
She
Okay.
was,
Do
so I was
thought this was
doing,
about Irma. We don't want
I
to talk
was-
about Lillian, do we?
No, no.
Is that
No.
Irma support?
Irma almost never said anything critically about anyone
Oh,
generally,
yeah.
but she did about
Oh,
Lillian
but
and
she
about
did.
Gary.
Oh, did she?
Well, when did Lillian come? What?
So it was after I was the manager, then I went away, then came back. She was not the manager, but then she
69 or
was.
so, I think.
Yeah, or maybe 70.
See, this is my chronology taken from all the program guides that I kept
Wow.
over the years. And
It was
in
69,
69, Roger Penn was still there.
Oh, good.
Bluegrass Unlimited. I just picked
You
out
have to give me
highlights.
this.
In July of 69, Mike Harris was the program director. In August of 69, Lillian Brown, they had her picture and a little bio inside the program
She
guide.
was the public
So that's
relations person for the university.
Yeah.
In she comes to the station. I'm doing an hour. She wants 5 minutes off of my hour in which to tell how wonderful American University is
Yeah.
and all its fabulous faculty. I don't think so, I said. Then she wants 10 minutes and she wants to put one of the faculty on. I mean, I think it was a fine school, but the point was not to chop up a thing in order to do public relations for the university.
Still
So-
isn't.
No. So I went to battle with her and I went to see the vice president. I mean, I really did what I could. Enormously pregnant. And she essentially fired me. I mean, I don't remember which happened first. I either said I can't work under these circumstances anymore, or I went into labor, or she said go away.
So it came under.
Susan had just come on board because Susan's account of this, because I
Harmon.
talked to
Yeah.
Susan
And what did she
at
put
Irma's
on it?
90th birthday, up
Yeah.
in Pennsylvania, and Susan said that this is Susan's account. So this is all sort of jelly.
Right, right.
Okay. Susan's father had done some tax work or
General.
something for Lillian, General Harmon, and he'd been the senior warden for National Presbyterian Church, former retired general and all this stuff.
Yeah.
So somehow, Susan had been living down in North Carolina with John,
From
Reporter.
NBC.
John
Oh, yeah. Oh,
Cochran.
yeah.
John Cochran.
Yeah.
And so he comes up here and she comes up here and her dad says, well, go talk to that woman Lillian. She does something in broadcasting. And Susan said she walked in just to meet Lillian, and I can believe this because this is the way Lillian managed things. Lillian said, hey, Susan Stamberg just quit. You've got the show, or something like that. I mean, it was like that close that, I mean, Susan wasn't there, but it was just as you either walked off or Lillian fired you or, forced you
I think it's
to
quite
not stand it
mutual.
anymore.
And
So it was like all of that.
How did Lillian get thrown out?
Okay,
Sue
so
did it.
here's the
Sue
story.
did it.
Okay, so
Susan
so
Harmon.
we made so Lillian came on in 69, okay, and I was just starting there. I was hired as the full-time production manager in 71. So we put up with some stuff with Lillian, and she was pulling all kinds of shenanigans. There was this young kid from Wilson High School that did some segment or something, and she said, he's terrible, fire it. And so we said, you fire, you're the boss. No, I've got to go do Eric Severide's makeup. And
Right. She did everybody's makeup.
So,
Makeup, that's what she
all the stuff was building, and the university wanted to cut us from 18 hours to 8 hours, and we're all like saying,
Yeah.
hey, we want to go 24,
Yeah.
and all this other stuff.
And she never
And
fought.
Lillian's using her position to recreate
Yes,
Harry
makeup artist.
Overstreet's funeral and making copies to give to Harry and Bonero Overstreet, the great psychologists or something. She's pulling all this crap. She takes me to do the DC Emmy Awards at WMAL over at the old skating rink, and they go in the green room and all, and say, well, we've seen enough of that, let's rank them. I mean, these people that were doing the Emmys were, so in that same mode, she's judging, remember this? She's judging some radio things, and the Wallensack tape recorder gets all screwed up, and Irma comes to me, she goes, Bill, come check this out. So we go in, and Lillian is sitting on the floor of her office with this pile
On all
of tape.
fours.
Honestly.
Coming off the reel.
Chasing a reel around
What's
the
going
room.
on? She's evaluating.
Program was just
So
going all
she has
around the
this
room.
stupid reel on a pencil, trying to rewind it, rewinding the tape.
I was very
It's
professional.
twisting. So she picks up this pile of tape and dumps it in the trash and goes over and sits at her desk and evaluates it. So this is all sort of, so we have this big meeting and the university is going to cut the hours, right? And we get wind that Lillian's going over to Fritz Whitty's office. He was the vice president for development at the university, because we're going to be told we're being cut back to 8 hours. And all of us let Lillian get out the door, and Susan and Jean and Dave and me and Alex and Irma, everybody, we piled into our cars and drove over to 5110 Wisconsin Avenue and crashed this meeting. And
We were
went
there
in.
before she
Oh,
showed
really?
up.
We got in there.
Wonderful.
We got in there, and Fritz Whitty's like, well, there's more people here than can fit. You better go down the hall to the conference room, right? So honestly,
And we were pulling chairs.
Yes, we
and
are pulling
Lillian was
chairs out
bringing
of
chairs
offices,
into the
and
room.
Lillian's turning to Fritz Whitty saying, I didn't invite these people. I didn't invite these people. Dave, am I right?
Oh, it was
And,
incredible.
it was unbelievable. So we're in this conference room, and Fritz Whit and Lillian said, well, we've got our walking papers, we've got to cut back to 8 hours, blah, 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 blah. And we said, no, we can do this, we can do that, we've got volunteers.
Right.
We,
We want to expand it.
WGMS just suffered a fire, right?
Yeah.
And we're off the air.
Yeah.
We said, we want to go 24 hours a day. We don't want to cut back to 8 hours.
Right.
We want to go 24 hours, and Ed Merritt, and he's going to do the overnight segment, classical music, because
Right.
GMS is off the air.
Right.
Well,
You had a
we weren't even
plan.
fundraising at that point.
Yeah.
So anyhow, back at Lillian's office, right? So, okay, well, we'll figure this out back at Lillian's office. So we go into her big office, and she's there at her desk, and Alex Hendrickson, I can picture him to this day, sitting next to the door on the floor like this, right? And Jean and Susan and Irma and all of us, of course, all of us are smoking those. There's big bookshelves all around. And Lillian said something, about, well, this is the way it's going to be. And Alex starts to get, well,
She spoke.
I guess she spoke, and we said, hey, no way. I mean, and that's the revolt. And Susan and Jean and Dave and I took, I think Fritz Whitty then had Ace Spaulding dig into things. He said, what the hell is going on? Why are all these people showing up in the office? Why is there this revolt? And we said, so we laid out, our accounts of all of these egregious things she'd been doing. Boom, Susan was in charge. Lillian had been bumped up
right
to
away.
5110 Wisconsin Avenue back with the university relations.
Right.
And
So it made it
we were
possible
underway.
for
Yes.
her and
Yep.
Diane.
What a
Yep.
great
Oh,
story.
it
I
was-
never
And
heard
what
it.
was so creepy for me is I had only been full-time like a month or something. And I'm like embroiled in this coup big time,
Were you still earning $1.78?
I was making more than that.
But that was the exciting thing about those times.
It
We
was.
were all
It
just
was.
new at it. We were all
Revolutionary.
figuring it out.
Yeah.
And Irma just went
Oh, so
with
this
the
station
flow.
could have come to an end, really. So
Wow.
Oh, there were so many
Yeah.
times that
Yeah.
things could have just fallen
And
apart.
of course, we
No.
were not yet members of NPR because we
That's
did
right.
not
No.
have
You didn't have the
5
qualification,
full-time
right.
employees.
Right.
It had
It
started.
took a
So there was an
Yeah.
NPR though. NPR had started by then.
Yes.
You-
Yes, by then they
Yeah.
had.
So
Yeah.
When did you go over to
71, didn't
71?
we?
It's when May
CCD.
71 went on, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Diane,
that's
I'd
right.
love to hear your story. I mean, I've shared little snippets,
Oh
but
my, it's so crazy.
really
Well,
just
just
your
tell about the
just,
Irma,
just what it was like.
The
Irma part.
Irma part was just so accepting. She was out sick that first day. She came back. She said, I could do this, I could do this, I could do just, you were on the air with her.
Yes.
As soon as you planned the program, you were on the air with her, and you and
Yes, and
I
this is
and
what
you
made it so
would
special.
all be on together and
Yes.
helping her and asking questions and writing things. Who knew? who knew how it was gonna go?
Yeah.
But she was so skillful and so diplomatic and bringing everybody into it
Right.
and allowing expansion. You know, whatever you thought you had an idea about doing, she'd say, go for
You
it.
go with it,
Yeah.
yes, that's
It's
right.
so
Yeah.
free
It
form.
was so
Yeah.
amazing.
Yeah.
We were so lucky.
And
Yeah.
then
Time.
absolutely.
Very creative
we were
time.
So
Now it
lucky.
wouldn't
And
happen
then
now.
Margaret, you and I went up to New Jersey
Yes,
to visit her at her new
Yes.
domicile. Which
we
was-
went through a weekend because Diane hadn't been able to go to her 90th.
Exactly.
And it was really,
It was lovely.
yes,
We
and it
just
must
had
have
a
meant
great
all the world to her.
Yeah.
It was
Oh,
great.
wait, so how old was she when she died?
She was
95.
Really?
and this was
Yeah.
when she would be just
Just
90 and a half.
Yeah.
Well, one thing I remember about her 90th birthday was after it was over, we were all going to our cars and she was in the parking lot bumming cigarettes from the valet parkers.
so much. Well, it's gonna kill you, right? So much for
Well,
that.
no, but there's another part of that. I remember being there for the 90th, and as we were walking down the halls with Irma, she was constantly being stopped by people who were saying, "Now, when are we supposed to do this? And when are
Yeah,
we supposed to
'cause
do
she
that?"
was very
She
active in the
she was organizing everything and everybody around her, and she was like the boss of the
The dowager,
retirement
would you
place.
say?
But very helpful. Your
I don't
gentle
know.
touch.
I don't know if people know, but she organized a trip to Norway for our family. Some way through it, she had a cousin. You know, she was from
Sure.
that area, and her
Right.
cousin-
Right.
and she had a cousin who was a travel agent. And at one point, you know, our family with our kids were like 7 and 10. You know, decided we'd love to go to Norway. And this cousin organized the whole trip. I mean, we got we got an envelope with tickets, you know, from everything from taking the boat up the side of Norway to taking the train down the Stone.
Wow.
Stiegen, with Trollstigen, you know, famous railroad all the way. And we did nothing except just give the ticket and show up. I mean, just
Great.
How nice.
I just am so grateful to her for those memories, and that, you know,
Yeah.
that was another part of her.
Yeah.
You may,
Tell a story about them selling the.
I was just gonna say that, you might know that when they sold the apartment, I think she said it was,
They bought it for, yeah, they bought that apartment whenever they bought it for $79,000.
Oh my God.
and they sold it for 300,000.
300 and something.
And this,
What year did
I
they
don't
buy
remember
it?
what year it was,
Uh-huh.
but she said the real estate agent brought in a 19-year-old George Washington University student.
19.
19,
old.
and he looked around and he said, okay, and he opened up a check and he started writing a check
For
for $300,000. And and she said, oh, just a minute. And they went in and called the bank and said, this 19-year-old's writing a check. They said, he's all right. He's one of the Prince of Jordan. And his twin brother is buying one down the hall because they couldn't live together. But that was, you know, we were all.
Was that, Bill?
I was trying to look because it was as they were leaving to go to Princeton when Fred retired.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but I'm wondering what year they bought it in.
Oh,
Well,
he might have been like an original
there,
owner or something.
there's
Yes, we
one
were.
detail I remember. He bought it while it's still being built.
Oh, okay.
Oh,
So
wow.
it was that kind of thing. He
But
was-
still, that was.
So
They
when was that?
Yeah, he was the State Department's chief
Historian.
historian.
Margaret, you need to tell a little bit about the
And
story
he didn't
of.
retire when he went to Princeton. He went to
Right.
work on the Woodrow Wilson paper.
Right.
Oh,
Mm.
right, perfect.
Right.
So
Well, he retired from the State
what story
Department.
were you
right?
thinking of?
That they grew up together. And
Oh,
she'd
that's
gone
right,
off and
that's
married, and then that broke up, and then she married
Yeah.
Fred.
Diane, did
Georgine was, and the two sons
Yes.
were the products at the first
This marriage.
That's,
Yes.
you know.
And then she met Fred after the
Yes.
breakup.
They weren't her
and
children,
as
they
you
were
say,
his
children.
how
They were-
But they know each other very, very well.
Oh, wait.
the three children
Right.
were
Yeah.
the children of Irma's first husband,
Yeah.
who was an actor.
Oh, I see.
And
Oh, my.
her
An actor, wow.
Wow.
I love Irma.
and a sort of rogue, I think.
Yeah.
Well,
Fred
don't
was
you remember
sitting
from her
and-
90th birthday?
novels get written.
Don't you remember from her 90th birthday they had the program or something of her in silhouette starring in something,
Oh,
in some play
she
or
was
something?
gorgeous.
Yeah.
She
Yes.
really was.
Yeah, I remember that.
Yes.
Absolutely
And
lovely.
what story Tom was thinking of is that Fred's father and Irma's father were young architects who emigrated to
Together.
Portland, Oregon from Norway.
Really? Wow.
The children would, Fred and Irma and other siblings would be together in the summer, I think, and be seeing one another all the time.
Yeah.
And I was saying to Fred, I like to think,
Saying to Tom.
I think that Fred always loved Irma. He just had to wait until she was.
Was available.
One statement I'll never forget that Irma made because it was so appropriate to John Rehm was, he has 11 seconds of small talk. And that's it.
Oh, that's
About Fred.
Oh, John said that about Fred.
No,
Irma
it applied to
said
Fred.
it about Fred.
But it would apply.
Oh!
But it would apply to Tom too.
Oh, no.
And
It's
John
very
Rehm
serious.
was
It's
the
like,
same way.
in other words, had real things to talk about.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes,
Get into something
Oh,
real,
I see.
don't chit-chat
Yeah.
about
Yeah,
it,
I see.
or it's-
yes.
Well, I remember in those
yeah.
years with, what does Fred do? And of course, Fred was sort of just in the periphery or, would come to something, or obviously we went to their place for a party or something.
Yes.
But I just sort of remember, so in the 70s, and Fred, I think, was like the chief historian or something
Yes.
for the State Department.
Oh.
And he had gotten the story of the State Department was current, to 1941 or something. I mean, he was always working, here was the 70s, but he was just up to 1941 or something, It's like this never-ending story.
I can remember a story, Margaret, you verify this. At some point, the big boss of the history group retired and they hadn't appointed a new person. So Fred was the acting person.
Oh.
And the way Irma told you is he went in, he'd been there forever, and he knew what was wrong and what was right, and he started putting everything right, and somebody got an award, and somebody got promoted, and he did all these things to make things rectified before his time was over and somebody else new came in.
Good for him.
Isn't that true?
I have no memory of that.
Well, I always think of Fred when I think of bureaucracy.
Oh, yeah. And that's just the sort of the courageous thing he would do. with his friends. You remember visiting them on the beach or bumping into them, and they were on the beach at Rehoboth, but Fred had his taxes all laid out with stones holding down. Because he wasn't the sort of person who would lie and sleep on the beach.
So
Do
summer
you remember
novels
that
for
too?
Fred.
I didn't remember until you said it.
Fair skin, both he and Irma.
Well,
Both had such fair skin.
Yeah, they
well,
were very
Norway.
So much
Well,
love.
yeah.
Think of it.
Yeah. Isn't that
Oh my
funny
gosh.
remembering?
Another show that grew out of the home show, and that's why I was going through trying to remember the two women's names that did it, and maybe you won't, was Women Dare Daily.
Oh, right.
Do you remember that?
That's
Is that a good title?
Yeah.
What
was it?
It was about women's liberation or something, and I can't for the life of me remember the two.
Who did
There
it?
were
Could
two
it be Michelle
producers.
Slung?
Who?
Michelle Slung
No, I don't think
was a
so.
freelance writer who used to help the
I
little in the
think it was
beginning.
later. It was later.
She was supposed to.
Yes, that's right.
That was a
What happened to
program? That was a
Franchesca
regular?
Women Dare Daily. Yeah, it was like once a week. It was like a limited
Yeah.
series or something.
Francesca,
Hecht.
she was quite a distinguished gardener,
Yeah.
as her mother had been.
Yeah,
She married Aldous Huxley's son,
Yeah.
Nephew.
Matthew,
yeah.
and really she continued to work for the government as a tree expert. Really, she
And
was an
then
arborist.
she died.
Did
And
she die?
she died.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Really?
that's what I wondered.
You know, she died after. I was thinking. I know that she'd had a wonderful breakfast with her family all around her, and sort of like scrambled eggs and ham and bacon. And I remember somebody in the family saying, don't feel sad for a moment. She wasn't going to change. She knew she had high cholesterol and a heart condition. And she lived life to the full, and she, those were very full years for Franchesca. I think we kept up with her, and she did a lot of good Quakerly deeds. She started up.
But there's more to the story, Mom.
Who did the money show?
Let's see,
Matthew,
Francesca.
Mark,
Oh, that's
Matthew
not
was
picture.
married
It's
to
just
Faye.
names.
Yeah.
Names, yeah.
That wife
love
died
that.
and
See?
selected.
Let them look at your
Francesca as
list,
the next
Bill.
one.
That's right.
It's alphabetical, but I don't remember seeing
Yes.
the name show.
Really?
No, this
Ask
is-
when our anniversary
that
is.
He needed somebody.
He doesn't know.
Oh,
Where's Gary? Is Gary still doing his show?
You know, Gary and Dick Spotswood are both still on the air, and it's been 47 years since they started that show.
Well, look at what's
Oh,
his name,
Lee
Ed
Michael
Walker,
Dempsey's
but
not
I
here.
remember John Hickman coming in. to
Right.
Of
run
course,
that
yeah.
Show.
These are all.
And,
With his dog.
Those are good.
And
Remember,
a script,
Alyne
and I would
Brown
pick it
went
up
to
and start
NPR.
editing
Boren.
it. It came over.
Alyne
Hickman.
Yes.
This was
Yeah.
all ungrammatical.
And her picture's on
Say,
that.
excuse me, what are you
photo on
doing? He was
Instagram.
right.
I don't remember a money person.
Yeah.
That might have
Leave
been-
that alone. He was right. I just couldn't stand bad
Oh,
grammar.
there's somebody.
you know,
It's a ghost.
So they're both there still.
No, Dick lives in Florida, and he
Spotswood.
sends his weekly show
Oh, he
in
does.
every week. But Gary is there
Yeah.
Saturday morning, Sunday morning doing the stained glass bluegrass gospel show, and Mondays noon to 3. So, and he's retired from NPR.
Yeah.
I
So-
just does from memory.
But we were fundraising this morning.
that's wonderful. Tom
Oh,
Cole.
good.
That's great.
Tom West.